You're living someone else's life. Right now, in this moment, you wake up and do what you're told. You work where they tell you. You want what they tell you to want. You think what they tell you to think. And somewhere deep inside, there's a voice screaming that this isn't you. But you've been ignoring that voice for so long you've almost forgotten it exists. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." He knew. The world is designed to make you mediocre, to keep you comfortable, to convince you that settling is the same as succeeding. And you bought it. You traded your potential for a paycheck, your dreams for approval, your authentic self for acceptance. The question is, how much longer are you going to keep pretending this is enough? How many more years will you waste being who they want instead of who you are? This video will either wake you up to the prison you've built, or you'll watch it and go right back to sleep. The choice has always been yours. You've just been too afraid to make it. The ancient Stoics knew something you've forgotten. They lived in a world without safety nets. No therapy apps. No participation trophies. No safe spaces. Just brutal reality. And the choice to face it or be destroyed by it. Seneca watched friends die. Epictetus was a slave who lost his leg. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while plague ravaged his people and his own children died. And they didn't complain. They didn't make excuses. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They built themselves into unbreakable men through philosophy, through discipline, through facing reality exactly as it was. And here's the part that's going to sting. You have more resources, more freedom, more opportunity than any of them, and you're doing less with it. You're softer, weaker, more distracted, more entitled. Seneca said it best. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. You're torturing yourself with problems that don't exist, creating drama where there is none, living in constant anxiety about things that will never happen, living like leaves blown by the wind. No direction, no purpose, just drifting from one distraction to the next until you're 6 feet under. But here's the good news. You don't have to stay this way. Today we're diving into 10 brutal truths from Stoic philosophy. Not the Instagram quote version. Not the watered-down self-help garbage. The real thing. The kind of wisdom that will rip the comfortable lies out of your hands and force you to look at who you really are. These aren't just principles. They're mirrors. And most of you won't like what you see. Each one of these truths is a weapon against the weak version of yourself. The version that complains instead of acts. The version that blames instead of builds. The version that feels instead of thinks. By the end of this video, you'll have a choice. You can close this tab and go back to your comfortable misery. Or you can use these principles to become someone you actually respect when you look in the mirror. Before we destroy your excuses one by one, I need you to do something. Hit the subscribe button. Not because I need your validation, but because if you can't commit to one simple click, you're definitely not ready to commit to changing your life. And don't skip ahead. If you're the type who jumps around looking for the easy parts, you're exactly why you're stuck. Now, let's begin. Principle 1. Have a firm purpose or drift like garbage. Let me guess. You don't have a real purpose. You have vague wants. You have someday dreams. You have, I'll get to it eventually, fantasies. But purpose? Real direction? The kind that makes you wake up at 5 a.m. without an alarm because you're actually excited about your life? You don't have that. And that's why you feel empty. Epictetus said, "Difficulties show a person's character, and the greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it." But you can't show character when you have no idea who you're trying to become. Marcus Aurelius was even more brutal about it. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." He didn't say think positive thoughts. He said expect hell and have a purpose strong enough to walk through it anyway. You're a ship without a rudder. You go whichever way the current takes you. Your mood changes with the weather. Your plans change based on how you feel. Your entire life is built on feelings instead of principles. And feelings are the most unreliable foundation you could possibly build on. Seneca put it simply, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." That's you. Every wind blows you in a different direction. Because you have no port, no destination, no purpose worth dying for. Here's what you need to understand. Every single person who's ever accomplished anything meaningful had one thing in common. They decided who they were going to be, and they refused to negotiate with that decision. They didn't wake up motivated every day. They woke up committed. There's a massive difference. Motivation is what you feel when things are going well. Commitment is what keeps you moving when everything's on fire. Your problem isn't that you don't have goals. Your problem is that your goals are weak. They're not connected to anything deeper. You want more money. Why? So you can buy more stuff you don't need to impress people you don't like. You want to get in shape. Why? So you can post gym selfies and get validation from strangers. You want to be successful. Why? Because you saw someone else living that life and it looked easy. These aren't purposes. These are wishes. And wishes are for children. Musonius Rufus, one of the lesser-known Stoics, said it brutally, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." You think you know what you want. You don't. You know what other people told you to want. Finding your purpose requires something you're allergic to. Deep reflection. Not the 5-minute journal entry kind. The sit with yourself in uncomfortable silence kind. The ask yourself questions you don't want to answer kind. You need to dig past the surface wants and find what actually matters. Not what your parents want. Not what society says you should want. What you actually care about when you strip away all the noise. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, said, "Man conquers the world by conquering himself." But you can't conquer yourself when you don't even know who you're trying to be. And here's the brutal part. Most of you won't do this. You'll nod along. You'll say, "Yeah, that makes sense." Then you'll close this video and go right back to scrolling. Because sitting with yourself is terrifying. It means facing the fact that you've been wasting your life. It means admitting you've been living on autopilot. It means taking responsibility. And responsibility is the one thing modern people avoid like the plague. But if you actually do this, if you actually take the time to figure out your firm purpose, everything changes. Suddenly, the little problems that used to derail you become irrelevant. Someone criticizes you. Who cares if you know where you're going? Something doesn't go according to plan. Adjust and keep moving. You have bad days? So what? Your purpose doesn't change based on your mood. A firm purpose is like having a compass in a storm. Everyone else is panicking, running in circles, changing direction every 5 minutes. But you check your compass and keep walking. Cato the Younger said, "I would rather be robbed than beg." That's a man with principles. He'd rather lose everything than compromise who he was. He literally chose death over compromise. Can you say the same? Or do you compromise your values every time it's convenient? Epictetus reminds us that with a firm purpose, nothing is impossible. But without one, everything is impossible. because you'll quit the moment things get difficult. And things always get difficult. So here's your first assignment. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Right now, pause this video, get a piece of paper, and write down what you stand for. Not what you want. What you stand for. What principles will you not compromise on? What kind of person do you refuse to become? What legacy do you want to leave? And if you can't answer those questions, you're not living. You're just consuming oxygen. But here's the encouragement buried in the brutality. The fact that you're still watching means something in you knows you're capable of more. That voice telling you to change, listen to it, because once you find your purpose and commit to it with everything you have, you become unstoppable. Principle 2, guard your mind or lose it to the crowd. Your mind is under attack every single second of every single day, and you're losing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But what's the quality of your thoughts right now? Let me guess. Anxiety about things you can't control. Resentment about things that already happened. Comparison to people you don't even know. Worry about things that will never happen. That's not thinking. That's mental pollution. You know what the average person does? They wake up and immediately hand control of their mind to someone else. Check Instagram. Scroll TikTok. Read the news designed to make you angry. Watch YouTube videos that make you feel inadequate. Within the first hour of waking up, you've already been told what to think by 1,000 different sources. And you wonder why you feel scattered. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance." But you don't even get to interpret anymore. The algorithm interprets for you. The headline tells you how to feel. The influencer tells you what to want. You're not thinking. You're being thought through. Let me be clear about something. You don't have an attention problem. You have a priority problem. You claim you don't have time to read, but you have time to scroll for 2 hours. You say you can't focus, but you can binge watch an entire series in one weekend. You say you're too busy, but you check your phone 150 times a day. Stop lying to yourself. Seneca was brutal about time. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He also said, people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. You're not busy, you're distracted, and distraction is just another word for weak. The Stoics understood something that modern people refuse to accept. Your thoughts create your reality, not in some woo-woo manifestation way, in a very practical way. The thoughts you allow to occupy your mind determine the actions you take. The actions you take determine the results you get. The results you get determine the life you live. So when you let social media algorithms decide what you think about, when you let cable news tell you what to be outraged about, when you let toxic people rent space in your head, you're literally giving away control of your life. And here's the part that should terrify you. Most of you have given away so much control for so long that you don't even know what your actual thoughts are anymore. You're living someone else's life in your own body. You have opinions you've never questioned because someone else told you to have them. You have beliefs you've never examined because they're popular. You have goals you've never truly wanted because society said you should want them. You're a puppet, and you don't even know who's pulling the strings. Heracles, a lesser-known Stoic, said, "The first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit." But your spirit isn't untroubled. It's a war zone, thousands of voices fighting for attention, and you let them all in. The Stoics practiced mind control, not the manipulative kind, the disciplined kind. They understood that your mind is a garden. And if you don't deliberately plant good seeds, weeds will grow automatically. Negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, self-doubt. These aren't things you have to try to grow. They're the default setting. So, you have to actively guard against them. This means being ruthlessly selective about what you allow into your mental space. That friend who only calls to complain, they're a weed. That news channel that makes you angry but doesn't inform you, it's a weed. That social media account that makes you feel like you're not enough, weed. Pull them out. I know what you're thinking. But that's harsh. You're right. It is harsh. You know what else is harsh? Waking up at 40 and realizing you've spent 20 years being miserable because you were too polite to set boundaries. Chrysippus, one of the early Stoics, said, "Vice cannot be removed without the knowledge of it." You need to know what's poisoning your mind before you can stop it. So take inventory. What are you consuming every day? What messages are you absorbing? What beliefs are being programmed into you? Be honest. Most of what's in your head isn't yours. It's borrowed, stolen, implanted. Guard your mind like your life depends on it, because it does. This also means controlling your reactions. Someone insults you, they don't have the power to hurt you unless you give them that power. Read that again. They don't have the power to hurt you. You give them that power by choosing to be offended. Something goes wrong. It's not the event that upsets you. It's your interpretation of the event. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. You can't control what happens. You can only control how you respond. But most people spend 100% of their energy trying to control things they can't control. Then they wonder why they're exhausted and nothing changes. Here's a practical example. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You have two choices. Choice 1. Get angry, tailgate them, let it ruin your next 20 minutes. Arrive at your destination stressed and irritated. Choice 2. Recognize they're probably late or distracted. Let it go, arrive at your destination calm. Same event. Completely different outcomes. The difference is mental discipline. But you don't have mental discipline. You have mental chaos because you've never trained your mind. You go to the gym to train your body. But your mind? That's on autopilot, running whatever program was installed by your parents, your teachers, your peers, and the media, most of which is garbage. So here's what you need to do. Start a daily practice of mind training. Meditation is the obvious answer, but I already know half of you just rolled your eyes. That's because you tried it once, couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, and decided it wasn't for you. Congratulations on having the attention span of a goldfish. But meditation doesn't have to be incense and chanting. It can be 5 minutes of sitting in silence, asking yourself tough questions. What am I worried about today? Is that worry actually useful or just mental noise? What can I control in this situation? What do I need to let go of? This isn't comfortable. That's the point. Growth never is. Marcus Aurelius did this every night. He wrote in his journal, asking himself hard questions, examining his thoughts, correcting his thinking. He was the emperor of Rome, and he still took time to guard his mind. You're not busier than the emperor of Rome. You're just lazier. Or try this. Every time you feel a strong emotion today, pause. Name the emotion. Ask yourself why you're feeling it. Ask yourself if your response is proportional to the situation. Then choose your response instead of reacting automatically. This simple practice will give you more control over your life than any productivity hack or morning routine. Here's the encouragement. Every single time you choose your response, instead of reacting automatically, you're building mental strength, like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Eventually, controlling your mind becomes natural instead of difficult. But you have to start, and you have to start now. Stop right here. I need to know if you're actually serious about this, or if you're just entertainment consuming like everything else in your life. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." So are you going to be one? Or are you going to keep arguing, thinking, planning, somedaying? If you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed yet, you're not committed, you're curious. And curiosity without action is just another form of procrastination. So here's the challenge. Subscribe to this channel right now. Not later, not maybe, right now. Then leave a comment with one specific way you've been letting other people control your mind. Don't give me generic answers. Tell me the truth. Is it your parents, your partner, social media, your co-workers? Name it. Because if you can't even name the problem, you definitely can't solve it. And if you're thinking I'll do it later, that's exactly the mentality that's kept you stuck for years. Seneca said, "While we wait for life, life passes." Stop waiting. Do it now, or close this video and stop pretending you want to change. The choice is yours. Now let's keep going. Principle 3. Handle criticism or stay weak forever. You can't handle criticism. Let's just get that out in the open. Someone gives you feedback and your immediate reaction is defensiveness. Or worse, you smile and nod. Then go home and replay the conversation 47 times, obsessing over what they said. Either way, you're letting other people's words control you. Here's a truth that's going to sting. Most criticism you receive is actually accurate. Not all of it, but most of it. The parts that bother you the most, those are probably the truest parts. Because the truth hurts. Lies bounce off. But truth cuts deep because somewhere inside you already knew it. Epictetus taught, if someone criticizes you, and it's true, correct yourself. If it's a lie, laugh at it. Simple, brutal, effective. But you do neither. You defend. You justify. You explain. You attack back. The problem is, you've been conditioned to protect your ego at all costs. You've been told you're special. You've been told to believe in yourself no matter what. You've been told that anyone who criticizes you is a hater, and all of that is garbage that keeps you weak. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake, or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone." Read that again. The Emperor of Rome was actively looking for people to prove him wrong, because he knew criticism was just information, and information is power. But you treat criticism like an attack. You take everything personally. You make it about your worth instead of your work, and that fragility is keeping you stuck. Epictetus also said, "We can't control other people's opinions, but we can control how we react to them." Most of you respond like children. Someone says you're wrong, and you either lash out or collapse inward. Neither response helps you grow. Here's what you should do instead. When someone criticizes, you pause. Don't defend. Don't explain. Don't attack back. Just pause and ask yourself one question. Is there any truth in what they're saying? If the answer is no, let it go. Someone's wrong opinion of you is not your problem. If the answer is yes, thank them. Yes, thank them, because they just gave you free information about how to improve. Most people won't tell you the truth. They'll smile to your face and talk behind your back. So when someone has the guts to give you real feedback, that's a gift, but you don't see it as a gift. You see it as an attack, because your ego is fragile. You've spent so much time building this image of yourself that any threat to that image feels like a threat to your existence. So you defend the image instead of improving the reality. This is why you're stuck. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Criticism is friction. It's uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. That discomfort is what polishes you. But you avoid discomfort at all costs. So you stay rough, unpolished, unfinished. The people who grow fastest are the people who seek out criticism. They ask for feedback. They surround themselves with people who will tell them the truth. They actively look for their blind spots because they understand that criticism is just information, and information is power. You, on the other hand, avoid criticism at all costs. You surround yourself with yes men. You only talk to people who agree with you. You get offended when someone suggests you could do better. Then you wonder why you're not growing. Here's another brutal truth. If everyone agrees with you all the time, you're either surrounding yourself with liars or you're not doing anything worth criticizing. Real growth happens at the edge of your comfort zone, and criticism is what shows you where that edge is. Now let's talk about the other type of criticism, the kind that's not accurate, the kind that comes from jealousy or misunderstanding or someone projecting their own insecurity. You need to handle this type differently, not by getting defensive, but by having such a clear understanding of who you are that baseless criticism can't touch you. This is where self-knowledge comes in. When you truly know yourself, when you know your values, your purpose, your principles, someone else's opinion becomes background noise. They can think whatever they want. It doesn't change who you are or where you're going. But you don't have that self-knowledge because you've never done the work to figure out who you are. So every piece of criticism rocks your foundation because your foundation is built on other people's approval. And that's the weakest foundation possible. Aristo of Chios, a less famous Stoic, said, "The wise man is sufficient unto himself," meaning he doesn't need external validation. His sense of worth comes from within, not from what others think of him. Can you say the same? Or does your entire mood depend on whether someone liked your post? The Stoics practiced something called negative visualization. They imagined the worst criticism they could receive. Then they prepared their response in advance. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. When you've already mentally rehearsed how you'll handle harsh feedback, the actual feedback doesn't shake you. Try this exercise. Write down the harshest criticism someone could give you, the thing you're most afraid of hearing. Now read it. Feel the discomfort. Then ask yourself, is this true? If yes, what can I do about it? If no, why am I afraid of it? This exercise strips criticism of its power because you're no longer avoiding it. You're facing it head on. Here's what happens when you learn to handle criticism properly. You become unteachable in the best way, not because you refuse to learn, but because you're only interested in truth, not opinions. You filter everything through your principles. If it helps you grow, you keep it. If it doesn't, you discard it. No emotion, no drama, just efficiency. And here's the brief encouragement. Once you develop thick skin and genuine self-knowledge, you become free. Free from the need for approval. Free from the fear of judgment. Free to actually pursue what matters to you instead of what others think you should pursue. That freedom is worth every uncomfortable moment of facing criticism head-on. Principle 4. Transform offense or stay bitter forever. Someone hurt your feelings. Let me guess, you're still thinking about it. Maybe it happened yesterday. Maybe it happened last year. Either way, you're carrying it around like a backpack full of rocks. and you wonder why you're exhausted. Here's the hard truth. That person who offended you, they're not thinking about you. They're living their life. They've moved on. But you're still right there in that moment replaying it over and over, giving them free rent in your head, making them more important than they deserve to be. Epictetus said, "What disturbs people is not things, but their judgments about things." Read that again slowly. It's not what they said. It's what you decided it meant. You took their words and you created a story around them. A story about what it says about you. A story about your worth. A story about whether you're respected. And that story is what's hurting you, not their words. Marcus Aurelius was even more direct. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. That's not positive thinking. That's reality. You choose to be offended. Nobody can offend you without your permission. Let me make this really simple. You're offended because you choose to be offended. Nobody can offend you without your permission. I know that sounds harsh. I know you want to say, but they were really mean. So what? Mean words only have power if you give them power. Think about this. If a 3-year-old called you stupid, would you be offended? No. Why not? Because you don't value a 3-year-old's opinion of your intelligence. So why do you value the opinion of people who clearly don't know you, don't understand you, or are speaking from their own pain? You're giving authority to people who haven't earned it. You're letting random people determine your emotional state. You've handed over the remote control to your feelings to whoever happens to say something you don't like. That's not strength. That's weakness. The Stoics understood that offense is a choice. You can choose to be hurt, or you can choose to see the situation clearly without the emotional story attached. Someone insults you? That tells you something about them, not you. Hurt people hurt people. Someone who's genuinely happy and at peace doesn't go around trying to make others feel bad. So when someone comes at you with negativity, you're probably just catching the overflow of their own misery. Why would you absorb that? Seneca said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." You're creating most of your suffering. The words happened. But the pain, that's all you. You're replaying it. You're adding meaning to it. You're making it bigger than it is. Here's what you should do instead. Practice cognitive reframing. That's a fancy way of saying, look at it differently. When someone offends, you ask yourself, what else could this mean? Could they be having a terrible day? Could they be projecting their own insecurity? Could this be a misunderstanding? Could they actually have a point I'm too defensive to see? This isn't about making excuses for bad behavior. It's about not letting bad behavior control your peace. You also need to practice forgiveness. And I know you don't want to hear this, because you think forgiveness means letting them win. But here's what forgiveness actually means. It means you're not going to let their actions continue to hurt you. It means you're releasing yourself from the prison of resentment. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to not be like that, not to plot, not to hold grudges, just to be better, to rise above. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. They're fine. You're the one suffering. Forgive them. Not for them, for you." Cleanthes, another early Stoic, said, "The willing are led by fate, the reluctant dragged." You can willingly let go of offense, or you can be dragged through years of bitterness. Either way, you're moving forward. One just hurts a lot more. Now, here's the part where I'm going to really challenge you. Sometimes offense is a gift. Sometimes it shows you exactly where you're weak. The things that offend you the most, those are your triggers. And your triggers are usually tied to your insecurities. If you're genuinely confident about something, nobody can make you feel bad about it. But if you're insecure, even a small comment can feel like a nuclear bomb. So instead of getting offended, ask yourself, why did that hurt so much? What insecurity did that poke? What do I need to work on? This transforms offense from something that hurts you to something that helps you. But most of you won't do this because it requires self-reflection, and self-reflection is uncomfortable. It's much easier to blame them, to play the victim, to tell yourself and everyone else how wrong they were. But here's what playing the victim gets you. Nothing, absolutely nothing, except more victimhood. The moment you decide you're offended is the moment you give away your power. The moment you decide to transform that offense into growth is the moment you take your power back. Here's the encouragement. When you master this principle, you become virtually unshakable. People can say whatever they want. It doesn't land. You're like Teflon. Nothing sticks. Because you're no longer getting your sense of worth from external validation. You know who you are, and that's enough. Principle 5. Overcome fear and shame, or they'll overcome you. You're afraid of failure, of judgment, of being exposed as a fraud, of not being enough, of being too much, of success, because then you'd have to maintain it, of trying because you might find out you're not as special as you think. And that fear is running your life. Every decision you make is filtered through what if I fail. Every opportunity you pass up is because what will people think? Every dream you've abandoned is because you were too scared to see it through. And the worst part? You've convinced yourself this is normal. You've convinced yourself that being afraid is just part of being human. And you're right. Fear is part of being human, but letting fear control you, that's a choice. A weak choice. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Most of what you're afraid of will never happen. And the things that do happen, they're never as bad as you imagined. But you're living your life based on imaginary fears, avoiding real opportunities because of fake scenarios you created in your head. Epictetus taught that we create fear in our minds by assigning meaning to events. The event itself is neutral. Public speaking isn't inherently scary. Starting a business isn't inherently terrifying. Putting yourself out there isn't inherently dangerous. You make it scary by telling yourself stories about what could go wrong. And shame? Shame is even worse, because shame is fear turned inward. Shame says, I'm not just afraid of judgment. I agree with it. Shame says, they're right to look down on me. Shame says, I deserve to feel bad. And you carry shame like a weighted vest you can't take off. Shame about your past. Shame about your body. Shame about your choices. Shame about not being where you think you should be. Shame about being ashamed. Here's the brutal truth. Your fear and shame are serving you. I know that sounds insane, but stay with me. Fear protects you from having to try. If you're too scared to start that business, you never have to face the possibility of failing. If you're too afraid to ask for that promotion, you never have to hear no. If you're terrified of putting yourself out there, you never have to risk rejection. Fear is a comfortable excuse, and you're addicted to comfort. Shame works the same way. If you can make yourself feel bad enough about your past, you don't have to do anything about your future. If you can stay stuck in I'm not good enough, you never have to prove whether that's true. Shame is a prison you've built yourself, and you're holding the key, but you won't unlock it because being trapped is familiar. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your fear lives in your mind. Your shame lives in your mind, which means you have power over them. But you won't use that power, because using it requires action, and action is uncomfortable. The Stoics said to overcome fear, you must face it. Not think about facing it. Not prepare to face it someday. Face it. Now, whatever you're afraid of, do it afraid. Scared of public speaking? Sign up for a speaking engagement this week. Afraid of rejection? Ask someone out. Terrified of failure? Start that project you've been putting off. You're waiting to feel brave. That's never going to happen. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. Bravery is acting despite fear. The feeling comes after the action, not before. Musonius Rufus said, "If you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures." Stop choosing temporary comfort that leads to permanent shame. Choose temporary discomfort that leads to permanent growth. And shame? Shame only survives in darkness. Bring it to light. Talk about it. Write about it. Acknowledge it. The moment you shine a light on shame, it loses its power. Because shame feeds on secrets. It grows in silence. It thrives when you think you're the only one who feels this way. But you're not the only one. Everyone has shame. Everyone has regrets. Everyone has parts of their past they wish they could change. The difference is some people let it define them, and others use it as fuel. Here's what you need to do. Make a list of your fears, all of them, the big ones and the small ones. Now, rank them. Pick the smallest fear, and do it. Today. Don't wait. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Then tomorrow, do the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you've faced every single fear on that list. This is called exposure therapy, and it works. Every time you face a fear and survive, you build evidence that you're stronger than you thought. You build confidence. Real confidence. Not the fake kind you get from Instagram affirmations. The kind that comes from actual proof. Same with shame. Write down everything you're ashamed of. Every mistake. Every regret. Every moment you wish you could take back. Then read it. Sit with it. Feel it. And then ask yourself, does this define me? Or can I learn from this and move forward? The answer is always the second option. Unless you choose the first, here's the encouragement that you probably don't deserve, but I'll give you anyway. On the other side of fear is everything you want. Everything. The life you dream about. The person you want to become. The respect you wish you had. It's all there, but you have to go through the fear to get it. There's no way around it. Only through. And the only way through is to start moving. Principle 6. Anticipate obstacles or be blindsided forever. You keep getting blindsided by setbacks, by problems, by things not going according to plan. And every time it happens, you act surprised. Like life hasn't been showing you the same patterns over and over. Let me guess. You're an optimist. You think positive. You believe everything will work out. And when it doesn't, you fall apart. Here's your problem. You confuse optimism with preparedness. You think hoping for the best is the same as planning for the worst. It's not. Hope is not a strategy. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Sounds dark, right? That's because you've been conditioned to think that imagining negative outcomes is pessimistic. But it's not pessimistic. It's realistic. It's intelligent. It's preparation. Seneca said, "The unexpected blow lands heaviest, but nothing should be unexpected." If you're paying attention, if you're thinking ahead, if you're actually preparing instead of just hoping, Marcus Aurelius literally wrote himself notes every morning, preparing for difficult people and challenging situations. He didn't pray for easy days. He prepared for hard ones. Then when hard days came, he was ready. When you anticipate what could go wrong, you remove its power to destroy you. When that obstacle appears, and you've already thought about how to handle it, you don't panic. You execute. But you don't do this. You avoid thinking about negative possibilities. You tell yourself, don't jinx it. You convince yourself that acknowledging problems might make them happen. That's magical thinking. And magical thinking is for children. Real adults anticipate obstacles. They look at their plans and ask, what could go wrong? They identify weak points. They prepare backup plans. They build in buffers. They don't expect smooth sailing. They expect storms, and they prepare accordingly. Epictetus said, don't demand or expect that events happen as you would wish them to. Accept events as they actually happen. But you can't accept what you haven't prepared for. Acceptance without preparation is just denial with better marketing. Let me give you a practical example. You're starting a new business. The naive approach is to imagine success and ignore potential problems. The Stoic approach is to ask, what if customers don't come? What if I run out of money? What if my partner quits? What if the market changes? What if I get sick? Then you create plans for each scenario. This doesn't guarantee success, but it massively increases your chances of surviving the inevitable setbacks. You know what the number one reason businesses fail is? Running out of money. You know what the number one reason people run out of money is? They didn't plan for it. They assumed revenue would come faster and costs would be lower. They were optimistic instead of realistic. And optimism without preparation is just fantasy. This applies to everything. Relationships, health, career, personal growth. You want to get in shape? Anticipate the obstacles. What happens when you get sick? What happens when you travel? What happens when you're stressed and want to stress eat? Plan for those scenarios in advance. You want to improve your relationship? Anticipate the obstacles. What happens when you fight? What happens when life gets stressful? What happens when the initial excitement fades? Discuss these scenarios with your partner before they happen. But you don't do this because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to pretend everything will be perfect. Then when it's not, you're shocked. You're unprepared. You're reactive instead of proactive. Here's another truth. The obstacles you face are rarely unique. Most of what's going to go wrong has gone wrong for millions of people before you. So why wouldn't you learn from them? Why wouldn't you study the common pitfalls and prepare for them? Because you think you're different. You think it won't happen to you. You think you'll figure it out when the time comes. And that arrogance is exactly why you keep getting blindsided. Seneca also said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. But you can only be strengthened by difficulties if you survive them. And you can only survive them if you've prepared for them. Anticipating obstacles also builds resilience. When you mentally rehearse handling difficulties, you're training your mind to stay calm under pressure. You're creating neural pathways that help you respond effectively instead of panicking. Athletes do this all the time. They visualize both success and potential problems. They practice their response to adverse situations. That's why they can perform under pressure. But you're not training your mind. You're hoping your mind will just figure it out in the moment. And it won't. In high-stress situations, your mind defaults to panic unless you've trained it to do otherwise. Here's what you need to do. For every major goal or project, spend time imagining what could go wrong. Write down the obstacles. Then write down your response to each obstacle. This is your contingency plan. When obstacles appear, and they will, you don't waste time being surprised or upset. You just execute the plan. Here's the encouragement. When you master this principle, you become incredibly hard to shake. Things go wrong and you're already moving to solve them. Everyone else is panicking and you're calm because you expected this. You prepared for this and now you're handling this. All right, let's talk about where you are right now. If you've made it this far, you're either genuinely interested in changing your life or you're procrastinating on something else. Let me help you figure out which one. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." So what are you? A consumer or a creator? A thinker or a doer? Someone who watches videos about change or someone who actually changes? Here's a simple test. Are you taking notes? Have you paused this video even once to actually think about what I'm saying? Or are you just passively consuming like you consume everything else? If you're just listening without acting, you're wasting your time. This isn't entertainment. This is work. And if you're not willing to work, you're not going to change. So here's what I need you to do right now. Pick one principle we've covered so far. The one that hit you the hardest. The one that made you uncomfortable. Write it down. Then write down one specific action you're going to take in the next 24 hours to apply that principle. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. In the next 24 hours. Then leave a comment telling me which principle you chose and what action you're committing to. This does two things. One, it forces you to actually engage instead of passively watching. Two, it creates accountability. Once you say it publicly, you're way more likely to actually do it. Unless you're the type of person who breaks promises to yourself. In which case this whole video is pointless because you'll never change anyway. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Your impediment right now is inaction. So, act. Prove me wrong. Take action. Leave the comment. Let's continue. Principle 7. Build inner strength or crumble when tested. You think you're strong. You've survived some tough times. You've handled some challenges. You tell yourself you're resilient. But are you? Or have you just been lucky enough not to face anything truly difficult yet? Here's how I can tell you're not as strong as you think. When someone criticizes you, do you need 3 days to recover? When plans change, do you have a meltdown? When something unexpected happens, does your whole week get derailed? That's not strength. That's fragility, covered in positive affirmations. Real strength isn't about never feeling affected. It's about how quickly you recover. It's about whether external events control your internal state. It's about whether you can maintain your values and purpose when everything around you is chaos. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters." You've heard this before. You've probably even agreed with it. But you don't live it. Because when something goes wrong, your first instinct is still to blame the circumstances, to wish things were different, to complain about how unfair it is. That's weakness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But you keep trying to control outside events. You keep wishing reality was different. You keep hoping for easier circumstances. And that wish is what makes you weak. Inner strength means accepting reality exactly as it is. Not as you wish it were. Not as it should be. As it is. Then deciding how you're going to respond from that place of acceptance. But you don't accept reality. You fight it. You resist it. You waste enormous amounts of energy wishing things were different. And while you're busy wishing the world moves on without you. Building inner strength requires something you've been avoiding: voluntary discomfort. You need to deliberately put yourself in difficult situations. Not because you're a masochist, but because that's the only way to build resilience. Muscles don't grow from comfort. They grow from being broken down and rebuilt. Your mind works the same way. If you only ever do what's comfortable, you stay weak. The moment real challenge comes, you break. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." You're avoiding the friction. You're running from the trials, then wondering why you're not polished, why you're not perfected. So you need to practice being uncomfortable. Cold showers, difficult conversations, saying no to people, doing things that scare you, going without things you want, sitting with your thoughts instead of distracting yourself. Every time you choose discomfort when you could choose comfort, you're building inner strength. But here's what you actually do. You optimize for comfort. Everything in your life is designed to be easy. Food delivered to your door, entertainment on demand, climate control, endless distraction. The moment something requires effort, you look for the easy way out, and you wonder why life feels hard. Life feels hard because you're soft. The Stoics understood that strength comes from resistance. They didn't avoid difficulty. They welcomed it. They saw every challenge as an opportunity to become stronger. They thanked the universe for obstacles because obstacles built character. You do the opposite. You avoid challenges. You pray for easy. You hope nothing goes wrong. And when something does go wrong, you fall apart because you've built no capacity to handle difficulty. Here's a question that's going to sting. What have you accomplished that was actually hard? Not hard for other people, hard for you. Something that required you to push past your limits. Something that tested you. Something that forced you to become stronger. If you can't answer that question, you're coasting, and coasting is the opposite of growing. Musonius Rufus said, "If you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures." Everything worth having requires work, real work, not the kind that feels good, the kind that hurts. That challenges you, that forces you to become more than you are. Building inner strength also means being willing to stand alone. Most people will sell out their values for acceptance. They'll compromise their principles to fit in. They'll agree with things they don't believe to avoid conflict. That's not strength. That's cowardice, dressed up as getting along. Real strength is being willing to be misunderstood, to be criticized, to be the only person in the room who disagrees, to lose friends because you refuse to compromise on what matters. But you're a people pleaser. You need everyone to like you. You need approval. You need validation. And that need makes you weak. Because when your strength depends on other people's opinions, you have no strength. You have dependency. Here's what you need to do. Start saying no to invitations you don't want to accept, to requests that don't align with your priorities, to people who drain your energy. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to your own strength. Practice discomfort daily. Do one hard thing every single day. Something that makes you uncomfortable. That's your training. Stop seeking comfort. Start seeking growth. And when life tests you, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "What is this teaching me?" That one shift in question changes everything. Epictetus said, "Difficulties are things that show a person's character." So what is your character? Do you fold at the first sign of resistance? Do you quit when things get hard? Do you need perfect conditions to perform? Or can you show up no matter what? Here's the brief encouragement. When you build genuine inner strength, you become someone you respect. You look in the mirror and you see someone who doesn't fold when things get hard. Someone who doesn't need perfect circumstances to show up. Someone who can be counted on. That respect you feel for yourself, that's worth more than all the external validation in the world. Principle 8. Restrain your actions or be controlled by impulse. You have no self-control. Let's just say it. You say you're going to do something, then you don't. You say you're not going to do something, then you do. You're ruled by impulse, by whatever feels good in the moment, by immediate gratification. You're a slave to your urges, and you know it. You were going to eat healthy, but then someone brought donuts to the office. You were going to save money, but then you saw something on sale. You were going to focus on work, but then you got a notification. You were going to have a calm conversation, but then you got emotional and said things you regret. Over and over. The same pattern, good intentions followed by weak execution. And every time you tell yourself next time will be different. It won't be. Not until you develop self-restraint. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But you don't have power over your mind. Your mind has power over you. Every urge you feel, you obey, like a dog responding to a bell." Stoicism is fundamentally about self-mastery, not mastering the world, mastering yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your desires, your words, your actions. But you can't even master yourself for 24 hours. Here's why. You've trained yourself to always follow your feelings. If you feel like eating, you eat. If you feel like buying, you buy. If you feel like scrolling, you scroll. If you feel like speaking, you speak. You treat feelings like commands. And that's the problem. Feelings are suggestions. Poor suggestions most of the time. Epictetus taught, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response." But you skip the space. You go straight from stimulus to response. No thought, no pause, no choice, just impulse. The Stoics taught that there should be a gap between stimulus and response. Something happens. You feel something. But before you act, you pause. You think, you choose. Most people skip the pause. They go straight from feeling to action. That's why they're reactive instead of proactive. That's why they keep making the same mistakes. That's why they have no self-respect. Because self-respect comes from keeping promises to yourself. And you can't keep promises to yourself when you're controlled by impulse. Let me give you a specific example. Social media. You know it's wasting your time. You know it's making you unhappy. You know it's destroying your attention span. You tell yourself you're going to stop. Then 5 minutes later you're scrolling. Why? Because you felt the urge and you immediately obeyed it. There was no gap, no thought, no choice, just stimulus and automatic response. You're basically a laboratory rat pushing a lever for pellets. Seneca said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power, but you don't have yourself in your own power. Your impulses have you in their power." The same thing happens with anger. Someone says something that bothers you. Immediately, you're reacting, defending, attacking. No pause, no thought, just impulse. Then later, when you've calmed down, you think, "I shouldn't have said that." But the damage is done. This is what living without self-restraint looks like. A series of impulse decisions that you later regret. A life controlled by whatever you feel in the moment. No direction, no discipline. Just reacting to whatever stimuli comes your way. Here's what you need to understand. Every time you fail to restrain an impulse, you're making it harder to restrain the next one. You're reinforcing the pattern of immediate gratification. You're training yourself to be weak. But every time you feel an urge, and you pause, and you choose differently, you're building willpower. You're creating a pattern of self-control. You're training yourself to be strong. This is the muscle we talked about earlier. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So here's your practice. The next time you feel a strong urge to do something, pause. Count to 10. Ask yourself, is this aligned with my goals? Is this who I want to be? Will I be glad I did this later? If the answer to any of those is no, don't do it, even if you really want to, especially if you really want to. This applies to everything: eating, spending, speaking, reacting, scrolling, procrastinating. Start small. Don't try to overhaul your entire life overnight. Pick one area where you struggle with self-control, just one, and practice restraint in that area for 1 week. When you want to scroll, don't. When you want to snap back at someone, don't. When you want to skip your workout, don't. Just for 1 week, prove to yourself that you can control your actions instead of being controlled by your impulses. Musonius Rufus said, "The soul that is attached to anything is incomplete and will be damaged by wanting." Your attachment to immediate gratification is damaging you, making you incomplete, keeping you weak. Here's what happens when you develop real self-restraint. You start keeping promises to yourself. And when you keep promises to yourself, your self-respect grows. When your self-respect grows, your confidence grows. When your confidence grows, your results grow. But it all starts with one simple thing: the ability to feel an urge and not obey it, to create a gap between stimulus and response, to choose your actions instead of being controlled by impulse. Here's the encouragement. Self-restraint isn't about deprivation. It's about freedom. When you're controlled by impulse, you're not free. You're a slave. But when you develop self-restraint, you're free to choose, free to act according to your values instead of your urges, free to become who you actually want to be instead of who your impulses make you. Principle 9. Accept reality or suffer unnecessarily your suffering, not because life is hard, but because you refuse to accept it. Everything you're stressed about, everything you're anxious about, everything you're resisting, it's all coming from one place: your refusal to accept reality as it is. You want things to be different. You think things should be different. You're angry that things aren't different. And that resistance to what is creates all your suffering. Marcus Aurelius said, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Not tolerate, not endure. Accept, love. But you can't even tolerate reality. You're at war with it. Let me be really clear about something. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what's happening. It doesn't mean you approve of it. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're acknowledging reality instead of fighting it. Because here's the thing: reality doesn't care if you accept it or not. It is what it is. The only question is whether you're going to waste your energy resisting it or use your energy responding to it. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." But you do the opposite. You wish for reality to be different. Then you're upset when your wishes don't come true. You lost your job. You can spend 6 months being bitter about how unfair it was. Or you can accept it happened and focus on what's next. Same situation, completely different outcomes. Your relationship ended. You can spend years wishing it had worked out differently. Or you can accept that it's over and use this as an opportunity to grow. Same situation, completely different outcomes. You got sick. You can be angry about it and ask, why me? Or you can accept it and focus on healing. Same situation, completely different outcomes. See the pattern? The situation doesn't change based on your acceptance, but your suffering does. The Stoics called this the art of acquiescence. It means cooperating with reality instead of fighting it. It means understanding that some things are outside your control and making peace with that. It means focusing your energy on what you can actually influence. But you don't do this. You waste enormous amounts of energy fighting battles you can't win. You argue with reality. You resist what is. You think about how things should have been. And all of that resistance creates stress, anxiety, and suffering. Seneca said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." But you can't enjoy the present because you're too busy wishing it was different, too busy comparing it to how things used to be, too busy worrying about how things might be. Here's a practical example. Traffic. You're stuck in traffic. You can honk. You can get angry. You can check your watch every 30 seconds. You can curse the other drivers. None of that makes traffic move faster. All it does is make you miserable. Or you can accept that you're in traffic. Put on a podcast. Take some deep breaths. Accept that you're going to be late. Same traffic, completely different experience. This principle applies to everything. People's behavior, the weather, politics, the economy, your past, other people's opinions, aging, death. All of these things are outside your control. You can accept them and find peace, or you can resist them and suffer. The choice is yours, and you keep choosing suffering. You know what's interesting? The same people who refuse to accept reality are the ones who complain the most about stress. They're stressed because they're fighting reality 24/7. That's exhausting. Of course you're stressed. Acceptance is not passive. This is important. Accepting reality doesn't mean doing nothing. It means accepting the starting point so you can effectively move forward. You lost your job. Accept it. Then take action to find a new one. Your relationship ended. Accept it. Then work on becoming the kind of person who can build a healthier relationship. You got sick. Accept it. Then do everything in your power to heal. Acceptance is the first step to effective action, not the last step. But most people get stuck in denial. They refuse to accept reality, so they can't move forward. They're frozen, stuck in the past, stuck in resentment, stuck in should have, could have, would have. Meanwhile, life is happening right now, and they're missing it because they're too busy fighting what already happened. Here's what you need to do. Make a list of everything you're resisting, everything you're angry about, everything you wish were different. Then ask yourself, can I change this? If yes, then stop complaining and start acting. If no, then accept it and move on. It's really that simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, but it is simple. For the things you can't change, practice the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. That's not just a nice quote. That's a framework for living. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "Stop whatever you're doing for a moment and ask yourself, am I afraid of death because I won't be able to do this anymore?" Most of what you're resisting isn't even important. You're just resisting for the sake of resisting. You're making yourself miserable over things that don't even matter. Here's the encouragement. When you stop fighting reality, you free up massive amounts of energy. Energy you can use to actually improve your life. Energy you can use to pursue your goals. Energy you can use to become the person you want to be. All that energy you've been wasting on resentment and resistance, it becomes available for creation and growth. We're almost done, but before we get to the final principle, I need to check something. Are you actually planning to use any of this? Or are you just going to close this video, feel inspired for about 15 minutes, then go right back to your old patterns? Because that's what most people do. They consume content about change instead of actually changing. It makes them feel productive without requiring any actual effort. Seneca warned about this. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. You're consuming everything, implementing nothing, and wondering why nothing changes. Don't be that person. If you've made it this far, you've invested 30 minutes. Don't waste that investment by not taking action. Here's your third challenge. Go back and review all 9 principles we've covered. Choose the one you're worst at, the one that made you the most uncomfortable. That's the one you need to work on first. Then commit to practicing that principle every single day for the next 30 days. Not when you feel like it. Every single day. Set a reminder. Track your progress. Hold yourself accountable. And if you're serious about this, share your 30-day commitment in the comments. Tell me which principle you're committing to and how you're going to practice it. This creates public accountability. And public accountability is one of the most powerful tools for change. Unless you're scared to commit publicly, in which case you're proving my point about being weak. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Stop arguing. Stop planning. Stop thinking about it. Be one. Make the commitment. Drop it in the comments. Let's see if you're actually serious or just browsing. Now, let's finish this. Principle 10. Live according to nature or live according to nonsense. Here's the final principle, and it might be the most important one. You're living wrong, not morally wrong, structurally wrong. You're living against your nature, and that's why you feel off. Let me explain. You're a human being. You have natural needs, rhythms, and purposes. You need sunlight, movement, real food, sleep, connection, purpose, challenge, growth. But look at how you actually live. You're inside all day under fluorescent lights. You sit for 12 hours. You eat processed garbage. You sleep 5 hours a night. Your connections are through screens. Your purpose is making money for someone else. You avoid challenge. You've stopped growing. Then you wonder why you're depressed, anxious, and unfulfilled. You're living like a battery chicken and expecting to feel like a wild eagle. It doesn't work that way. Marcus Aurelius said, "Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by." The virtues, not your bank account, not your social media following, not your job title, your virtues. How you lived according to your nature as a rational social being. The Stoics talked about living according to nature. This means living in alignment with what you are, not what society says you should be, not what your parents wanted, not what looks good on social media, what you actually are as a human being. This requires brutal honesty. You're a biological organism. You're designed to move, to think, to create, to connect. But you've engineered all of those things out of your life. You've optimized for convenience. And convenience is killing you. Everything is easy now. Food appears at your door. Entertainment is endless. Communication is instant. Climate is controlled. And you're miserable because easy isn't fulfilling. Easy is numbing. Human beings are not designed for easy. We're designed for challenge, for struggle, for overcoming. Every single culture throughout history understood this. They created rituals, rites of passage challenges, because they knew that humans need resistance to thrive. But modern life removed all resistance, then sold you therapy to deal with the emptiness. Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." You have more than any human in history. More food, more entertainment, more information, more everything. And you're more miserable than ever, because having more isn't what you need. Living according to your nature is what you need. Living according to nature means asking yourself, what do I actually need as a human being? Then structuring your life around those needs instead of around comfort. You need movement. So move. Not because you're trying to look good, because you're designed to move and sitting is unnatural. You need real food. So eat real food. Not because of macros or diets. Because your body is designed to run on real nutrition, not chemical combinations invented in the last 50 years. You need challenge. So seek challenge. Not because you're a masochist, because growth comes from struggle. And you're designed to grow. You need purpose. So find purpose. Not because it sounds nice, because humans without purpose become depressed. And that's been true for all of human history. You need connection. So connect. Real connection. Face to face. Not through screens. Not through likes and comments. Through actual human interaction. But you don't do any of this. You do the opposite. You sit. You eat garbage. You avoid challenge. You drift without purpose. You connect through devices. Then you take medications to fix the symptoms. Instead of addressing the cause, Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." You want everything. You need nothing. Or rather, you need the basics. And you're ignoring the basics while chasing everything else. Here's another aspect of living according to nature. You're social. You're tribal. You're designed to be part of something larger than yourself. To contribute, to help, to build. But you've become isolated. You live alone. You work alone. You eat alone. You entertain yourself alone. Then you wonder why you feel lonely. Humans are not designed to be alone. We're pack animals. We've always lived in communities, helped each other, relied on each other. That's our nature. But modern life prioritized independence over interdependence. And now everyone is independent and miserable. Living according to nature means rebuilding community, finding your tribe, contributing to something beyond yourself, being part of something meaningful. This also means accepting the natural cycles of life, growth and decay, success and failure, connection and loss, life and death. You're trying to avoid all the negative parts. You want growth without decay, success without failure, connection without loss, life without death. That's not how nature works. Everything is cyclical. Seasons change. Empires rise and fall. People come and go. That's natural. Marcus Aurelius watched his children die. He watched plague destroy his empire. He knew he would die, and he accepted all of it as natural. He didn't rage against it. He didn't ask, why me? He accepted it and focused on living with virtue anyway. Fighting against these cycles creates suffering. Accepting them creates peace. Living according to nature also means cultivating virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These aren't abstract ideals. They're practical guides for living well. Wisdom means seeing clearly and acting accordingly. Courage means doing what's right, even when it's hard. Justice means treating others fairly and building trust. Temperance means balance and self-control. When you live according to these virtues, you're aligned with your nature as a rational social being. When you don't, you're at war with yourself. The problem is, modern culture doesn't value virtue. It values success, wealth, fame, pleasure, none of which leads to fulfillment. You can be successful and miserable, rich and empty, famous and lonely, pursuing pleasure and never satisfied, because those things aren't aligned with your nature. But virtue always feels right, because it is right. It's what you're designed for. Here's what living according to nature looks like practically. Wake up with the Sunday. Move your body every day. Eat real food. Sleep enough. Spend time in nature. Connect with real people. Do meaningful work. Face challenges. Help others. Practice gratitude. Cultivate wisdom. Act with courage. Treat people justly. Exercise self-control. It's not complicated. It's just the opposite of how you're living now. And I know what you're thinking, but I have a job. I have responsibilities. I can't just restructure my whole life. Yes, you can. You just won't. Because restructuring your life requires sacrifice. Sacrifice of comfort. Sacrifice of convenience. Sacrifice of what other people think. And you're not willing to make those sacrifices. So you stay stuck, living against your nature, wondering why nothing feels right. Seneca's final words before he died were about living well according to nature. He didn't regret his wealth, or his position, or his fame. He focused on whether he lived virtuously, whether he lived according to his nature as a human being. That's what matters at the end. Not what you had, but how you lived. Here's the final encouragement. When you align your life with your nature, everything clicks. You stop feeling like you're fighting yourself. You stop wondering what's wrong with you. You start experiencing what humans are supposed to experience. Fulfillment, purpose, peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're living in alignment with what you are. And that alignment is what you've been missing your whole life. Conclusion: the choice is yours. We've covered 10 brutal truths, 10 principles that can transform your life if you actually apply them. But here's the thing, most of you won't. You'll watch this video, you'll feel inspired. You'll think, yeah, I need to change. Then tomorrow you'll be right back to your old patterns. Scrolling, complaining, avoiding, blaming, reacting. Because inspiration without action is just entertainment. And you're really good at being entertained. The Stoics didn't write philosophy to make people feel good. They wrote it to make people better. But better requires work. Uncomfortable work. Daily work. Work that nobody sees. Work that doesn't get likes or comments or validation. Are you willing to do that work? Most people aren't. They want the results without the process. They want the destination without the journey. They want transformation without discomfort. And they wonder why nothing changes. Marcus Aurelius spent his entire life practicing these principles. Every day, in his journal, in his actions, in his leadership, he was the most powerful man in the world. And he still did the work. You have no excuse. But maybe you're different. Maybe you're one of the few who will actually take this seriously, who will choose one principle and practice it relentlessly, who will face their weaknesses instead of hiding from them, who will do the hard work of becoming someone they respect. If that's you, start today. Not tomorrow, today. Pick one principle, the one that hit you hardest, the one that made you most uncomfortable. That's where you need to start. Then practice it every single day. No excuses, no exceptions. When you want to give up, remind yourself why you started. When you want to quit, remember that quitting is why you're stuck. When you want to take the easy path, remember that the easy path leads nowhere. The Stoics understood something that modern people have forgotten. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your choices. Every choice you make is either moving you toward the person you want to be or away from them. There is no neutral. You're either growing or dying, building or decaying, becoming stronger or becoming weaker. So, what are you going to choose? Are you going to close this video and go back to comfortable misery? Or are you going to use this as the wake-up call it's meant to be? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. You've just been pretending you don't have one. Stop pretending. Start choosing, and choose to become someone you actually respect when you look in the mirror. Epictetus said, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? How long? Another year? Another decade? Until you're on your deathbed wishing you had started today?" The ancient wisdom of Stoicism isn't just philosophy. It's a manual for living, for building inner strength, for creating unshakable peace, for becoming the kind of person who doesn't fold when life gets hard. You have everything you need. The knowledge is here. The principles are clear. The only question is whether you're going to use them. I hope you do. I hope you take this seriously. I hope you commit to the work, because on the other side of that work is the life you actually want. But wanting it isn't enough. You have to build it, one choice at a time, one principle at a time, one day at a time. Start now. Before you go, I need to know you're serious. Seneca said, "Putting things off is the biggest waste of life." So don't put this off. If this video resonated with you, if you're genuinely committed to changing your life, then prove it. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future content that will continue to challenge and push you. Like this video so I know it's helping people, and I should make more like it. And most importantly, leave a comment right now. Tell me which of the 10 principles you're committing to practice. Tell me why you chose that one. Tell me what your first action will be. Make it public. Make it real. Make it count. And if you found this helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Someone who's stuck. Someone who's making excuses. Someone who needs a wake-up call. Don't gatekeep transformation. Spread it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. The best revenge against your weak past self is to become your strong future self." Starting right now. Now go do the work. Stop consuming and start creating. Stop watching and start becoming. The life you want is waiting, but only you can build it. Get started.